Hello, and welcome to part 3 of chapter 5 of my Catholic superhero novel, Task. Let's begin. Jose, would you please give me a hand getting dessert? Mom asked. Everyone can stay here. We'll just be a moment. Happy to help, Mrs. Ward, Jose said, and he followed her into the kitchen. Dad was right behind them. Well, Uncle Frank said, if Jose comes back out of the kitchen alive, I think we can safely say Faustina's birthday dinner was a success. Faustina glided over to Matthew with a dreamy look. You've got quite an act to follow, biggest brother, she said. I don't know how you're going to top that. My gift might not top it, but I think it will match it perfectly, he said. I am intrigued, Faustina replied. After dessert, I'll get it ready, and then I'll call you all out. Out, as in outside? Matthew nodded. Faustina narrowed her eyes. What are you up to, Matthew? She asked. Just be patient, Matthew said. Faustina looked at him with suspicion in her gaze, but then smiled and bounced back to her seat. Matthew felt a tug on the back of his shirt. He turned, and Mark leaned to him. Uncle Frank's here. May as well marry them now, Mark whispered. Matthew laughed quietly. I hope you're ready to deal with the consequences when Maggie wakes up, Mark said. Matthew's smile faded. He had considered the impact of the revelation of the truth on Jose in the abstract, but not in terms of his relationship with Faustina. They had hit it off remarkably well, but when the truth about Matthew and Maggie came to light, it could destroy Jose and Faustina's chances. I'll make it good, Mark, Matthew said. You better, Mark replied, and he nodded at Faustina. She was excitedly talking with Nisha, Anne, and Mary. Happiness shone from her face like light. Matthew reflected for a minute and silently prayed for courage and wisdom. Then Jose appeared, carrying a platter with a pile of handmade ice cream sandwiches. There was a candle sticking out of the mint chocolate chip one on the top of the pile. Everyone sang happy birthday to Faustina, and she blew out her candle, put it in a napkin, and picked up her ice cream sandwich. Jose brought the platter around to everyone, and when he was done, he put it on the coffee table and plucked up a strawberry ice cream sandwich. Faustina had waited for him, and she gently bumped her dessert into his. Cheers, she said. Salud, Jose replied. They devoured the desserts, and both took another one from the platter. Matthew finished his peanut butter cup ice cream sandwich and went to the kitchen to wash his hands. His mother followed behind him. Jose have your approval? He asked his mother as he washed. He had a very nice conversation with your father and said all the right things, Mom said, and I believe he meant them. He passes. But, Matthew said, but they're both so young, and Faustina's already head over heels for him. She hasn't even been to college yet. Neither have Mary, Luke, or Johnny, Matthew said as he dried his hands with a paper towel. I know, Mom said. I'm just fretting for no reason. No, Mom, you've got a great reason, Matthew said. You love Faustina. I do, Maddie, and she's still my littlest baby, Mom said. I don't know if I'm ready for a man to take her away, too. Mom, Mary lives with you, and it takes 10 seconds to walk to Anne's house, Matthew said. You know what I mean, Matthew, she said. But I will say this. You found quite a catch for her. If Jose really is as good as he seems, I think he is, then they could be very good together. Though it would be nice for at least one of my children to marry someone Irish. I'm working on it, Matthew said. And who knows? Maybe one of Jose's ancestors was a San Patricio. Whether or not that's true, he'll make a fine addition to the family, if it comes to it. What's his last name? Perez. Faustina Perez. Doesn't sound bad at all. Agreed, Matthew said. Now, are you going to tell me what your gift for Faustina is? You'll see in a few minutes, Matthew said. I'll tell you this much. If Jose hasn't fallen in love with her yet, he will after Faustina is done with my gift. Oh, Matty, if it's what I think it is, Faustina will love it. And you're right, Jose will fall in love with her on the spot, Mom said. I'm going to go prepare, Matthew said. I'll call everyone out in a few minutes. Would you please make sure the lights are all off? I will. Thanks, Mom. Matthew left the house through the front door and went around back. He turned on his phone's flashlight to avoid stumbling and to find the hose and heavy-duty flashlight. He unrolled the hose and took it about 60 feet away from the house, then went back to the faucet and turned it on. He let it run for about a minute and then turned it off. He used his power to lift the water off the ground about a foot and spread it out into a thin, circular plane about 50 feet wide and no more than an inch thick. Then he raised the flashlight 20 feet above the disk of water. It was pointing down. Matthew re-rolled the hose and then opened the back door and poked in his head. "All right, Faustina's present is ready," he shouted. He used his power to turn on the heavy-duty flashlight and then bent down and picked up a good clump of dirt. While he waited for his family, he plucked a few stray blades of grass out of the dirt. He had kept his phone flashlight on, and he was using his power to make it float in front of him. His family came out, led by Faustina and Jose. "All right, Matthew, what's the surprise?" Faustina asked. Matthew stepped to the side so Faustina could clearly see what was behind him. He then presented the dirt clump to her. "Happy birthday," he said. "Oh my gosh, Matt, this is perfect," Faustina cheered. She immediately started to take off her shoes. Jose was bewildered. "He gave you dirt, and you're excited?" he asked Faustina. "You'll see," she said to Jose. "Oh, and take off your socks and shoes, please." "I'm totally lost, but I'm still going to go with it," Jose said. He removed his footwear. "Toss it, Matt," Faustina said to her brother. Matthew threw the clump of dirt between the flashlight and the water and used his power to stretch it out into a very thin cloud about 5 feet above the water's surface. "Anne," Joachim said, "is this the thing you told me about?" "Yes," Anne said. "It's been years since Faustina and Matthew have done this." "Good choice, Matt," Mark said. "You sometimes make me think you actually have a brain in your skull." "Mark, you are too kind," Matthew said. "Okay, everyone, shh," Faustina said, and she skipped over to the edge of the disk of water. She extended her hands, and within a few seconds, the entire... that's not correct. There we go. That's how the English works. She extended her hands, and within a few seconds, the entire disk was frozen. Then she stepped up on the ice and began to skate. She was barefoot, so it was not exactly skating, but that's how Matthew thought of it. Faustina's power gave her complete freedom of movement on ice and snow. She could glide across it, stick to it, anything she wanted to do, so long as she made contact with it. And her never getting cold was more than just not feeling cold. Her body simply was immune to any negative effects of low temperatures, no matter how low. As Faustina skated, she ran her fingers through the cloud of dirt particles Matthew had strewn over the ice, and as she did so, she froze tiny droplets of water onto them. They glittered in the light like stars. Before long, it looked as if Faustina was dancing across the night sky. "Wow," Jose whispered. Faustina would leap and twirl, rapidly change direction, and then bound into the air again, and slowly the little stars of ice began to follow her. Matthew wasn't doing anything. It was Faustina's cryokinesis gently drawing the stars along behind her. She added more and more twinkling ice crystals to the cloud until she was surrounded by a swaying and swirling field of diamonds. The tiny stars interwove with one another in complex patterns, then shot out in every direction for a moment, and then swarmed together and flashed brightly, only to split, twist, and regroup at the edge of the ice. Matthew looked at Jose. The young man was enraptured. "Jose, come up here with me," Faustina called. She came to the near side of the ice and extended her hand. Jose hustled over to Faustina, took her hand, and stepped onto the ice. "Oh, that is cold," he said. "I'm sorry," Faustina said. "No, it's okay, it's ice. I knew what I was getting into," he said with a smile. Out of the corner of his eye, Matthew saw Mary hurry inside. "Hold on," Faustina said, and she slowly drew Jose along with her across the ice. "It's so smooth," he said. "Do you have Zamboni powers, too?" Faustina giggled and sped up. She spun through the field of stars with Jose, first extending her arms and pushing him out, and then spinning and drawing him close. He laughed and whooped as Faustina drew him this way and that on the ice. Each was totally focused on the other. Mary came back outside with 2 towels on her shoulder and a small plastic tub of hot water. "It's time, Matthew," she said to her brother. "All right, Jose, big finish," Matthew shouted. "What does he mean?" Jose asked Faustina. "He means he is ready to catch you," Faustina said, and she sped up and spun the two of them around much faster. "Catch me?" Jose asked. 3, 2, 1, go! Faustina shouted. She let go of Jose and he went flying off the ice, but Matthew caught him with his power and floated him over to where Mary had placed the tub. "Roll up your pant legs, Jose," Matthew said before lowering him. Jose did as instructed, and then Matthew placed him in the foot bath. "Oh, that is perfect," he said. "Thanks, Matt." "Thank Mary. She got the water for you," Matthew said. Mary tossed the towel to Jose. Tell Matthew when you're ready, and he will lift you up again so you can dry your feet, Mary said. Thank you, Mary, Jose said. Faustina hopped off the ice, but had left the icy stars wheeling about beneath the flashlight. Mary handed her a towel, and she thanked her and wiped her feet clean. Then, standing on the towel, she slipped her shoes back on and went to Jose. So, what did you think? She asked him. That was awesome, he said. You were awesome. So were you, Faustina said. Have you skated before? First time, Jose said. Oh my gosh, you were so good, she said. My family's pretty big on ballroom dancing. That probably helped. Singing and dancing? Faustina said. You could have a one-man show on Broadway. Okay, Jose, time to dry off, Matthew said. I'll see you inside, Faustina said. See you inside, Jose repeated. Everyone went in, leaving Jose and Matthew alone. Matthew helped Jose dry off and get his socks and shoes back on his feet. While he was doing that, the outdoor lights came on, so he turned off the flashlight and portaled it back to its place in his parents' front hall closet. Matthew also placed the ice on the ground, though he left the tiny stars in their places. How you doing, hermanito? Matthew asked him. Matt, I don't know which way is up right now, Jose said, but I don't care. He looked intently at Matthew. Did you see her, Matt? I did, Jose. No, like, really see her, he said. I feel like I got to see her soul, and she's just so beautiful. Jose shook his head. I've had crushes before, but this is something else, Matt. I just want to be Faustina's knight. That's the best way I can put it. Do you get what I mean? Matthew thought of Maggie. I do, Jose, he said. I think I know exactly what you mean. So you felt this way before? Jose asked. Yeah, I have. What happened? The situation is very complex, Matthew said, and a lot of things would change dramatically if I was with the woman I love. Jose went over to Matt and grabbed his shoulder. You're in love, and this is the first I'm hearing about it? Jose asked. Hermano, we've got to talk. Not tonight, Jose, Matthew said. Why not? It's not the right time, Matthew said. And you kind of just admitted you're in love with my sister. Oh, yeah, I guess I kind of did. Yeah, we can talk later. Time for you to go anyway, Matthew said. You've got that overnight TAC group assessment. Besides, if Anne asks you the wrong questions, things could get very tricky very fast. Yeah, no, I'm definitely not ready for Faustina to know. You'll keep it a secret? I'll have to give them something, but I will not mention the L word, Jose, I promise, Matthew said. Even with Anne? Jose asked. I'm used to dealing with her, Matthew said. I know how to keep a secret. Jose embraced Matthew. You're the big brother I've always wanted, man, he said. Play your cards right, and I could be your big brother-in-law, Matthew responded. That would be amazing, Jose said. Matthew slapped Jose on the back, and they went inside. People were milling about the living room, chatting and laughing. All right, everyone, Matthew announced. I have to portal Jose back to HQ before he becomes a pumpkin. But it's still early, Faustina protested. Her disappointment was plain to see. I'm sorry, I've got an overnight duty, Jose said. It won't take long, but I can't miss it. What is it? Faustina asked. I have to review a live feed of a training op we're running in an undisclosed foreign location and provide a tactical critique. Oh, wow, yeah, that's probably really important, Faustina said. It is, but I'd rather stay here if I could, Jose said. Faustina blushed. Well, you know the street where I live now, so I hope you'll visit again, she said. Definitely. I'll visit so much you'll get sick of me. With your parents' permission, of course, Jose said, glancing at Matthew's father and mother. Dad nodded, and Mom smiled. I don't think I'll get sick of you, Jose, Faustina said. Jose and Faustina locked eyes in silence for a few moments. Ask her for her number already, Mark shouted. Oh, yeah, could I have your number, please? Jose asked. Faustina nodded while smiling warmly. I'll text it to you, Matthew said, and I'll give you his number, Faustina. Thanks, Matt, Faustina said. Bye, Jose. It was so great to meet you. It was great to meet you too, Faustina. Good night, and happy birthday. There was an awkward pause, as neither Jose nor Faustina knew what to do, but then Faustina decided to give Jose another tight hug, though this one was much briefer. Matthew opened the portal back to HQ. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for having me over, Mr. and Mrs. Ward. Jose smiled at Faustina one more time, and then went through the portal. As soon as Matthew sealed it, Faustina leapt at Matthew and gave him an enormous hug. "Thank you so much," she squeaked, and then she twirled to the couch and collapsed next to Mary. "So you had a good birthday, I take it," Matthew said. "Did you text him my number yet?" Faustina asked. Matthew took out his phone. He had put it back in his pocket, and texted Faustina's number to Jose and Jose's number to Faustina. "Done." Faustina cheered and then bolted straight up in her seat. "Did he say anything about me?" she asked Matthew. "He did," Matthew said. "Tell me everything," Faustina said. "No," Matthew said. "But I can give you highlights." "I'll take highlights," Faustina said. "Okay, 2 highlights then," Matthew said. "Number 1, he said that watching you on the ice was like looking into your soul, and you were, and I quote, just so beautiful." Faustina fell over and plopped her head onto Mary's lap. Her face was as red as it had ever been. "Shall I go on?" Matthew asked. "I don't know, Matt," Mark said. "I think she might explode into snowflakes if you do." "Second highlight, please," Faustina said, still resting her head on Mary's lap. He said, and again I quote, "I just want to be Faustina's knight." Faustina covered her face with her hands. "I'm dead," she said. "I'm dead at 19 and in heaven." Everyone started making comments or laughing. Mom brought Faustina some water, which Faustina promptly froze and then applied to her cheek and forehead. After a few minutes, Faustina had cooled down, and she made an announcement. "I need girl talk. Time for boys to leave." "Hold up," Mark said. "We haven't rendered judgment on Jose yet." "Let's do a lightning round," Matthew suggested. Yes, that's definitely not correct. Thank you for marking that for me, Word. Thank you, Clippy. "Let's do a lightning round," Matthew suggested. "Mom, you're up." "Oh, well, I'll say more during girl talk, but I think he is a gentleman and a charmer," Mom said. "I approve." "Dad?" Matthew asked. "He passes," Dad said. "And Uncle Frank," Matthew said. "He'd make a fine pastor after I'm gone," the priest said. "Not happening, Uncle Frank," Faustina said. "All right, I'll stop teasing you. He's good by me." "Mark?" Matthew asked. "He can hold his own," Mark said. "Thumbs up." "Niche?" "He prepared a Broadway serenade," Nisha said. "He knows how to treat a lady. You could learn a few things from him, honey." "I know how to treat a lady, Nisha," Mark said to his wife with a wink. She smiled coyly as he put his arms around her. "Oh boy, moving on to Luke," Matthew said. "I'm 90% of the way to a decision," he said. 90% already," Matthew said. "Gotta be a record. How about Annie?" "He's an honest guy. I like him," she said. "I agree with my wife," Joachim said. "Married just a short time and already so well trained," Mark said. "Anne is a very good judge of character, and I trust her," Joachim said. I love you so much," Anne said as she snuggled against her husband. He smiled and kissed her head. That feels weird. Should I say forehead there? Yeah, let me say forehead. Oh, no, don't highlight all those things. Just give me that. He smiled and kissed her forehead. "That leaves Johnny and Mary. Who wants to go?" Matthew asked. "I'm still nerding out over his answer to the Tom Bombadil question. He's got my vote." "Last but never least, what do you say, Mary?" Mary turned to Faustina and looked in her eyes. "Faustina," she began, "Jose is a grade A Catholic hunk. Make him cough up a ring ASAP." "Spicy Mary!" Anne and Faustina shouted, while the rest of the room laughed. After the laughter died down, Mary continued. "But it is important to become friends first," she said. "I know, you're right," Faustina said in genuine agreement. "Well, that's it then," Matthew said. "Jose has unanimous approval." "What about you?" Mark asked Matthew. "Introducing them was my idea. Of course I approve," Matthew said. "Well, what about Faustina?" Uncle Frank asked with a grin. Everyone turned their gaze to her. I don't know. I guess he was nice," she said. "That's a lie," Anne said. "Of course it is. I'm in love." Faustina caught herself, but there were still a few gasps. "I really, really, really like him," she said. "I'll let that one go," Anne said. "Okay, I need girl talk. Good night, boys," Faustina said. The men said good night and waved goodbye and migrated into the dining room. Everyone but Matthew sat down. He leaned on a chair. He was almost ready to go home and get to bed. "Well, that was a resounding success," Uncle Frank said. "Well chosen, Matthew." Thanks, Uncle Frank, Matthew said. It went about as well as a setup could possibly go. And do you think tonight will go well for you? Uncle Frank asked. Matthew's father looked at him. It will, Matthew said. I have nothing to fear. In that case, I remind you of the story of the preacher who took his congregation outside to pray for rain and no one brought an umbrella. I know, Uncle Frank, Matthew said. I'm just warning you. If you ask Maggie to marry you, it could trigger something. She might wake up. I believe you, Matthew said to his uncle. Then dress for the weather, Uncle Frank said. To that end, Matthew began, if Maggie does wake up, there's an excellent chance we will be spending some time in the bunker. If I trigger the alarm, it will not be a drill. Are you finally going to tell us where the bunker actually is? Mark asked. No, Matthew said. Just know it is safer and more secure than anywhere else. It's on the moon, Mark said. Gotta be. Hopefully you'll never find out, Matthew said. With that, I'm off to bed. Good night, gentlemen. I love you and God bless you. Matthew received a round of good nights, I love yous, and God bless yous as he went to the front parlor. He opened a portal to his bedroom, stepped through, and closed it behind him. His weariness crashed down on him. He wanted to flop onto the bed, but Uncle Frank's warning stuck with him. I need my umbrella, he mumbled to himself. Matthew went to the bathroom and got ready for bed, and then changed into tan cargo pants and a green sweater. He pulled his favorite sneakers out from under his bed and put them on over thick gray socks. Then he picked up his rosary beads from his nightstand, forced his way through the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and then dropped onto his bed. He rolled onto his back, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. And that does it for Chapter 5. Thank you so much for watching Part 3. I really appreciate it. I would also appreciate if you would like, subscribe, or follow, and please share and leave a comment. The comments really do help me to improve the story. Thank you so much. God bless you, and take care.
Ooh, ancient province.